India plays a major role in the global trade and supply chain, especially in the medical field, being the largest provider of generic medicines globally. At the recent ASEAN summit, President Marcos urged the bloc to strengthen cooperation with India for access to cheaper medicines. Now, what other aspects can the two nations improve cooperation on? We are joined by Indian Ambassador to the Philippines, Shambhu Kumaran. Good afternoon, Ambassador, and thank you so much for joining the program.
Good afternoon and namaste.
Good afternoon, Ambassador. Let's start now with the state of bilateral relations between the Philippines and India. What do you think are the sectors which need more stronger cooperations between our two countries?
Well, the last few years have seen the India-Philippines relationship gain in momentum. I think we are at a sweet spot in our partnership. You mentioned healthcare, which is, of course, an area of great priority, particularly during and even after the pandemic. I think this will continue to be a strong priority for us. A broad developmental partnership that includes areas of importance for the Philippines, such as agriculture, financial technology, MSME development. That's on the plate. In addition, we want to build also a relationship that supports our national security aspirations, our respective national security aspirations in the evolving architecture of the Indo-Pacific region.
Ambassador, what about the technologies on digital fintech between our countries? We are trying to strengthen at least both countries' efforts on the business side. Your ideas on this, please?
Absolutely. What we're working on is multiple tracks. We have finalized an MOU to set up a joint working group on fintech, which will also cover digital payments as well as direct benefit transfer. As you know, India has pioneered the use of national IDs to directly transfer welfare payments to millions of people, which worked very well during the pandemic. And I was told that the Philippines is also very interested in this. So we have that governmental track. We also want to try and bring our businesses in this area together. There are already Indian companies that are working closely with financial institutions and banks in the Philippines. We want to expand that into a bigger partnership.
Speaking now of the pandemic, Ambassador, I do believe that when the pandemic started, there were talks between our government of the Philippines and of India trying to help the Philippines when it comes to vaccine manufacturing and even the possibility of putting up a vaccinology center here in the country. Do you have any updates on that, Ambassador?
Well, these discussions are ongoing. I think we are definitely focusing on creating some manufacturing capacity using the ability of Indian companies in this space. We do have an ongoing discussion on that, but I don't have anything concrete to report. Essentially, the political priority is there. We're trying to match the business case so that the businesses can figure out what is commercially viable.
Let's look now at the bilateral ties between our two countries, because we have just started with a new administration when the new President Marcos Jr. came in come June. Has there any change in the bilateral ties between our two countries since then?
Well, I can definitely say that we are witnessing new energy and new dynamism under President Marcos. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Marcos had a conversation on the phone in August this year. They agreed on the areas that I mentioned, that we should try and focus our governmental effort to try and promote cooperation in those areas: agriculture, health, fintech, national security and defense. And we had a meeting between Foreign Secretary Manalo and my minister, Dr. Jaishankar, on the margins of the ASEAN earlier this month. The political dialogue is on track. We are having a lot of business-to-business events, including regional outreach in various parts of the Philippines. We had a trade delegation recently that was in Cebu and Davao. In addition to Manila, we did a big event at the Mindanao Food Congress in Cagayan de Oro. Essentially, we're beginning to see under President Marcos a clear political direction to try and put on this partnership with India, and we will fully reciprocate.
Ambassador, what about the state of our overseas Filipino workers currently working in India now? Could you give us an update on them, please?
Well, the overseas Filipino workers, the numbers in India are not as high as in some other countries, but what I can tell you is that they are very valued, and they're a very important part of the economic landscape in India.
So many international so many international delegations are being fettered to and fro between a lot of countries right now. COP27 summit in particular is speaking about climate change, and the whole world, especially our ASEAN region, is talking about making a better future for Southeast Asian countries. What are the talks between Philippines and India when it comes to climate cooperation?
This is an important area for both our countries. We are essentially trying to cope with the consequences of changes in the climate. We do have a sort of discussion around bilateral engagement on renewable energy, because we do believe that with India's extraordinary growth in renewable energy, making India one of the stars of the global renewable energy landscape, and the serious interest on the part of Philippine corporations, we did hold a bilateral business conference focusing entirely on renewable energy with the Indian companies who are active in this area, talking to their Philippines counterparts. I know that there are various big projects that the Philippines corporates have announced, and we do see an opportunity for Indian companies to be partners in that process. So that's the concrete manifestation. And while India and the Philippines both have similar approaches in terms of mitigation and adaptation.
Speaking of renewable energy, Ambassador, the Department of Energy in the country has actually opened its doors for business when it comes to renewable energy, fully foreign-owned renewable energies, I mean, because here in the Philippines, we only have 22% of renewable energy for the whole sector. And I was thinking, is India as excited, as interested in investing for renewable energy in the country as the other European countries are?
Definitely. I think this step by the government to open up the RE space to foreign companies for 100% investment is a very positive step. It is obviously a conversation that we will need to continue to expose Indian companies to. But as I was mentioning, the renewable energy buildup in India is so massive that a lot of our corporations are heavily committed to that process. So we would like to see how we can look at, in the first instance, maybe partnering with some of the Philippines corporates to kind of provide them with the necessary equipment or other supplies. And then eventually I would see that this partnership could go into areas where there is the possibility of Indian investment coming into the Philippines. There's a very strong shall I say, a step by the Philippines government to open the sector, and it will lead to, I'm confident, Indian investments in the RE space.
All right, and lastly, Ambassador, before I let you go, today is a special day for India because it's Indian Constitution Day, if I'm not mistaken. And from what we've been researching, it's the longest written constitution. Ambassador, do you think that your constitution is still relevant to the times now, or are amendments in order?
Well, the Indian Constitution, as you rightly say, we are marking the enactment and adoption of the Indian Constitution on 26 November 1949. And this Constitution has proven to be one of the most dynamic and effective constitutions. And if you see India's history in the past 75 years, we're also celebrating 75 years of India's independence. Essentially, what we are seeing is that the Constitution has been this dynamic guiding document that encapsulates the civilizational aspiration for democracy and the civilizational democratic ethic in India, fusing that with values of constitutional liberalism, fundamental rights, bring about a very, very effective document that is not just guaranteed, but promoted democracy in India and opened up the processes of equity and justice to this very large population that we have.
And with that, I will let you go. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. We're looking forward to a stronger ties between our two countries. You have a good afternoon ahead. Thank you, our Indian Ambassador to the Philippines, Shambhu Kumaran. Coming up, the Philippines detects